Hey, hey, Miss Lola.
Hello.
Hello, we're so happy to have you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks so much for making the time. We really appreciate it. I know it's late. I'm a little bit used to it, but I know it's a bit awkward for you maybe at 9:30 coming on, but we've been so excited. So I'll just give everyone a chance to maybe introduce themselves, and then after that, we'll give you a chance to tell us a little bit about yourself. So I think I'll go first. So my name
Okay.
is Miriam. Yeah, Miriam Galadima Benson. I run Quilt Africa Fabrics, and we talk about quilting, we talk about Africa, and it just seemed natural to extend that into the literature of Africa and to get a better idea of everything that we talk about with our quilting and the fabrics and all of that. So we started this book club, and so here we are. So I live in Abuja. I'm an architect, but I'm now a quilter. So I have 3 kids. So yeah, that's it. So, Emily, would you like to go next, please?
Sure. Hi, I was so thrilled to read this book, and I'm very excited you're here. My name is Emily. I live in Oakland, California, and I found Miriam, I think, through the Salvage Magazine African Wax Print Festival about a year ago, something like that. I can't quite remember. And I'm a former librarian and a reader. And one of my favorite books in the past years has been another novel about polygamy. And that was in the white Mormon community, both in the 19th century and the 21st century. I think you mentioned it, Lola, right? The 19th wife.
That's right.
Right. I have to say I was impressed with so many things in your book, but I guess we'll all talk about that later. So, you said you have 3 dogs. I want to hear more about your dogs if there's time, or see them jump up on your lap.
Okay.
Barbara?
Nice to meet you, Emily.
Elizabeth?
My name is Elizabeth, and I live outside of Chicago, and I really enjoyed reading this book. I hadn't really read any books about polygamy before, so it was very interesting. I am a big quilter, and I also teach preschool.
Lovely. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Barbara?
Hi, my name is Barbara Montgomery. I am a retired library educator, and I taught librarians how to become librarians. And I have 2 daughters, and one became a librarian like her mom, and the other one is an urban planner, and she's working on her doctorate. My husband is a minister, and we live here in Columbia, South Carolina. And
Right.
I am loving African literature. I cannot believe I've never read any African literature until now. I am so glad I met Miriam, and that I have been linked to this wonderful literature and to quilting. It's just been very fun and exciting. And I'm so excited to talk with you.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Steph?
All right, hello there. My name is Stephanie Moss. I'm in Houston, Texas, and I am a retired K-12 educator and also higher ed organizational development administrator. And so been quilting since 2006, I think, and always been a learner and a reader. And so the book club interested me, particularly the title of your book has caught my attention. I'm just now preparing to purchase the book, but just listening to folks talk here today, I'm really excited about getting started and really delving in. It sounds like it's going to be really exciting. So glad to be here today.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Okay, Marguerite.
Hello, everyone. Excuse me.
Sorry.
Hello, everyone. I'm Marguerite Eberhardt, and I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I am a fabric artist, and I'm retired school administrator. I have one adult son and some grandchildren. In fact, I have two here now, so they may be in any moment to say something.
Oh my
But
goodness, I think we're frozen.
beg pardon? Oh, okay. And
Oh,
I
sorry.
am an avid reader. In fact, my book club, we just celebrate our 15th anniversary this month, of us being together. But I hate to say I haven't read the book yet because I was finishing another book, The Girl with the Louding Voice,
Ah,
which I would
my
recommend.
friend.
Yeah, I would recommend it, but I am looking forward to reading your book, Lola. And I hope that our discussion today of me listening doesn't ruin it for me.
It's not. It's not.
Sorry.
They've shared a few important details, Marguerite, but I'm still interested.
It's
Need
just
to
going
read
to make you
Determined.
want to read it more.
Yeah, it
Oh,
really
that
is.
sounds good. Maybe my book club will read it this year.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yeah. My month
Yeah.
is April. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Lola. So
Hi.
would like to hear what you can tell us about yourself before we bombard you with all the questions that we have prepared. But I would like if you would start with your name, possibly the pronunciation and the meaning, because yeah, maybe one or two of us are struggling with it. And I think it's also a great behind the scenes of what Africa is about as well.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for having me, Miriam. Like you said, it's late here, and I tend to get into bed quite early. So it was a struggle to stay up for this, I have to say. But I'm very, very happy that I did, and of course I would have made it anyway. But thank you for inviting me. So my name is Lola, but I'm used to people calling me Lola. It's happened all my life. I went to boarding school in Edinburgh, Scotland, when I was 6 years old. And I tried very hard to get people to pronounce my name properly, but they just didn't. And after a while, it didn't bother me much anymore. So my name is Lola, which is short for Titi Lola. And Titi Lola means bounty, goodness, and wealth forever. So in Yoruba land, I'm a Yoruba girl. They say you always look at the family circumstances before you name a child. And my father had just established quite a number of companies in Nigeria at the time and decided that that's what he was going to name me, because I have 5 older brothers. And the fourth one was called Mobolaji, which means I've woken up to bounty. Then Oladipupo, which means my bounty is now plentiful. And then Titi Lola, bounty forever. So sometimes people are named in themes in that way. I must admit straight off the bat that I know very little about quilting. Everything I know about quilting, I've learned from reading African American fiction, which I enjoy very much. Studied quite a bit in university. In fact, I wrote my thesis on Toni Morrison's work. So that's, I mean, I know very little about quilting, but everything I know has to do with the sense of community, family, generations, and of course, the little things I used to see in the Ebony magazine. I am 48. I have 4 children. My eldest is 26. My youngest is 18 in a few months. I live in Lagos, Nigeria. I organize the Ake Arts and Book Festival, which is the biggest literary festival on the African continent. I also run Kaba Fest, which is another festival which takes place in northern Nigeria. I always say my head is in Ake, but my heart is with Kaba Fest, because for that kind of region that has seen a lot of violence and not a lot of literary activity within the context of a festival, it's really lovely to be able to introduce that to that part of the country in such a meaningful way. I also run a publishing house called Reader Books, and I also run a bookstore. So it's like the entire literary ecosystem. So it's end to end, the writers, the sense of community that one is building, and with the writers at the festival, actually publishing writers, of course, and then selling books. So we've recently opened a cafe and a studio for creating audiobooks and podcasts about books. So yeah, it's my life kind of revolves around books and writing, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Great. That is some of the things I knew, but some I had no idea how deep you were, deeply entrenched in the world of words and literal communication. But I think it's just wonderful. I happen to be in Abuja. I had early dreams of being a writer, but somewhere along the line, I lost that. I've always been a reader, but with the children, mine are still young. Incidentally, I'm 46. But there's like a whole world between your kids and my kids. So they're still young, and I lost track of reading. So the idea of this book club and with these wonderful ladies, it has just reignited so much in me. And I look forward to learning more about the festivals and visiting and hopefully sharing it with the group as well. So I think we would keep in touch, and then we can see how we can keep sharing the message of, I'm from Gombe, so I completely understand about the North just being many steps behind what happens in Lagos. I've lived in Lagos as well, schooled in Queen's College in Lagos, so I can compare both sides of the spectrum, as it were, So thank you so much for what you're doing. Helen spoke very highly of you, and I'm so happy that you allowed him to be a successful go-between for us. We really appreciate that. And so with that, I will just open the floor and let the questions come in. So maybe I should start. Maybe you tell us a little bit about your earlier years and how you got into writing and how you knew this is it for me. This is what I want to pour in this is my pursuit. I think I'd love to hear that. Yeah.
Thanks for that. So I think I'm a little different from many writers in that I didn't think becoming a writer was something particularly special. And I always say that I think it's because from very early on, from when I was about 6, 7. In fact, I remember the Prince of Wales, Prince Charles. He's a writer too. A lot of people don't know this, but he wrote a children's book called The Old Man of Lochnagar. And he was doing a book tour. So he came to my school, the prep school that I was going to in Scotland at the time. So the connection between writer and words was something I was very familiar with early on. And to be honest with you, I thought it was something most people did. I thought most people eventually at some point wrote books. I thought everybody in the world was forced to read for 45 minutes after lunch and 15 minutes before bed, like I was. I thought everybody had the benefit and the opportunity of contributing to literary magazines, going for declamation contests for the school. It was just so commonplace and ordinary that I just, I read voraciously and I just thought, writing was something everyone did. So when I was 12, of course, I tried to write, start a few very Western novels where all the characters had English names. And that's just, I think, as a consequence of what I was consuming, which is a lot of Enid Blyton, Roald Dahl, the Just Williams series, stuff like that. And then, of course, after that, I was introduced to Mills and Boon, because I'd basically run out of all the literature available in Nigeria at the time. And a friend of mine introduced me to Mills and Boon. I don't know if you know those books. I mean, I'm sure you do, Miriam, but I'm not sure if everybody else remembers them. They're kind of like the Harlequin. So, I mean, they were just crazy. I used to read 2 in a day. You'd get to school. I mean, after I came back to Nigeria, you get to school in the morning with the one you're reading. Find someone else who's got another copy, exchange with them. And the idea was that you had to give it back before home time. So you had 6 hours to read this book, put it on your lap while you're in school. Like, grrr. So you're there writing and your teacher thinks you're paying attention, but you're just reading this book. And so I was kind of just reading a lot, reading for entertainment, reading out of boredom, reading for escapism. And that's basically my life. When I got to university, my lecturers, I did a creative writing course, and that's when they said, you know what, we think you've really got something. And that was even with my poetry. So I'm primarily a poet. A lot of people know me as a poet. Baba Segi the book has done quite well. And suddenly people call me a novelist. It still feels strange to me because I started my life as a poet. I have 3 books of poems. And of course, recently I've been writing children's books. So I also have 3 children's books. The other thing that I have in common with a lot of the incredible ladies here is that I spent most of my my working years being a teacher. So I was an English, media studies and theatre drama teacher for many years, both in the UK and then back in Nigeria, rose to the position of deputy head until I left education in 2012. So it feels like I'm talking to people who understand my language. So that's it for me about my early years.
It's rich. That's a whole lot. And I'm sure in retrospect, you can see how all of these experiences have just created the perfect foundation, if you like, or the springboard, more. And of course, with a lot of effort from you, because I know writing is not an easy thing. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I think for a little while, that's it for me. I'll just allow the other ladies to get their questions in and satisfy their curiosity about this awesome book that we're all reading about. Yeah. So who'll go first? Who has a question?
I do. I am curious. You talked about, starting out as a poet and writing, books of poetry. So what gave you the idea to begin writing this novel and on, such an, I guess, engaging topic?
Okay, so both my grandfathers were polygamists. I often say when people talk about polygamy in America, for instance, sometimes you talk about it within a religious context, like with the Mormons. But for us, it's a cultural phenomenon. There cannot be many Nigerians who look back 3 generations and don't find polygamy there. My grandfather was born in 1896, very educated, went to Wesley College, became a king, and of course he still went on to marry 4 wives on top of the one that he had when he was still a traveling teacher, preacher. But anyway, I when I was 14, my second brother had this girlfriend who was a medical student, and she would come to our house every weekend. And I loved talking to her. I loved all her gory stories about, operations they did and what direction the blood squirted and things like that. I found it highly entertaining and engaging. Spent a lot of time with her. And for 2 weeks, she was in the O&G department, or 4 weeks. And she came and she said, "Oh my God, you won't believe what happened. This man, this is what we found out today." And then she said, "Oh, what am I doing? I've got to tell you what happened 2 weeks before so you can really understand what happened today." And I sat down and she told me this story about this man who had 3 wives, not 4, as you find in the novel, who was an Igbo man, not my ethnicity, who was a spare parts dealer. And she told me this entire story about the man. Now, the thing is that I was 14 and I was in Form 4, which is the 4th form of secondary school. And we'd just finished reading Lola Shoneyin's A Lion and a Jewel. And I was just horrified by the treatment of women in that novel. I just felt that they were reduced to objects of pleasure for men. And it made me feel like, it made me feel not only inadequate, but it made me worry a lot about my future and what was laying in wait for me as a woman. So when I heard this story that the novel is based on, I just thought it was a perfect antidote. It was a perfect kind of return serve to that author for that book. A novel that empowers women, that means a novel where, although they are crippled and almost have to become broken in order to survive, there was still some power that lay within them. And I thought that was very attractive for me. And that's really where the story came from. In terms of the meat of the story, like I said, both my grandparents were polygamists. And all my life, I've heard stories about what family life was like in that situation from both my parents, especially my mom, who is almost paranoid, to be honest. And a lot of that paranoia has its foundation in growing up within a polygamous family where there's such a high level of competitiveness, not only amongst the wives, but even amongst the children. And you're raised to become suspicious. Being suspicious is really being cautious. That's what your mom has to teach you to be able to survive in an environment where everyone is basically trying to please the man at the very center. So that's how it all started. And I had all the ingredients. I had the story, but then I also had lots of these tidbits from my parents' lives that I was able to bring to bear when the time came to sit down and actually write the novel, which I didn't write for another 15 years, I should say.
Wow, thank you.
Well,
Go ahead, Emily.
one of the things that struck me in your novel was the physicality of it and the ways you describe not only the sexual encounters and the crazy guy in the bathroom trying to get his sperm out, which, I mean, no other woman has written about that. It's pretty amazing. But just what a physical character you made the Baba himself. And let me get rid of the sound here. it just made him so very alive to be this man who was just excreting and flopping and overall disgusting, but physically. But you made a very complex character because he was that, which was disgusting, and he was an authoritarian polygamist, but he was trying his best to be a loving husband, and he was an adoring father for his own ego. But he was such a rich character. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks a lot for that, Emily. Yeah, he's a lot of people say very unkind things about Baba Segi, I have to say. But every time I mention some of the things that you've observed, and I'm really happy about that, that he was obviously just a product of his time, his environment, you know. He didn't really know any better. But in all of that, and perhaps contrary to what many would expect, he was an excellent father, a doting dad to his children, and a responsible, and he was a provider to his wives. He did his best. And I love that you give him credit for that. You know, so yeah, thank you.
To be honest, I think right from the beginning of the book, even with his overinflated actions, I had some sympathy for him, you know, because I think, well, yes, once you recognize he's just a product of what he sees and what he has learned, you know, and what cultural Africa makes the man out to be, then you begin to see him struggling within who he is, maybe the gentle, kind, loving person, but you still have to be. And I think that's one thing that a lot of men, African men, or maybe men in general, I don't know, I don't have any experience with them, but that's a lot of things that men generally struggle with, abiding within that stricture, but which often is in conflict with who you are on the inside. So my sympathies were really with him, and it just broke me when he was broken, to be honest. I felt so bad for him. I did.
Yeah, it's what a friend of mine often says. She says, all my life, my boy is 15. I pound feminism down his throat. I show him everything that he's meant to do and respect women. And then he steps out the door and the world tells him something else. And she says she's losing the battle. She says she's losing, that she doesn't spend as much time with the boy. But that is a sad, a sad observation, that sometimes even when men desire to be tender and kind and giving and, loving, the world teaches them to be different, and teaches them to believe that demonstrating attitudes that are the exact opposite to those lovely elements is what is demanded of them. And that's a real tragedy, not only for women who then have to deal with that, but for the men themselves. Like you've said, they disappear and become that which they believe they should be, and not that which they are.
That's true. That is so true. That is
The
true.
The characterization in the book of all of the characters is so well done, especially the wives. You know, I think about when we think about Baba Segi and his character, and like you say, how he tried to do his best, and in many ways he succeeded, but if you really begin to break down all of the wives that he had to deal with, the different characters that he had to deal with, he it was almost like he was in a field where there was always going to be a losing battle, because these women were very sharp. They came with knives already sharpened, and they were not afraid to use them. So it just kind of makes me sad that they knew. And I felt so sorry for the last wife because she walks into this minefield of women who have decided, oh well, she's not going to be one of us because first of all, she's educated. So she's automatically out. And it's just, this book is just so well done.
Thank
And
you so much.
I've never read a book more than once. But I can read this book over and over and over again. There are parts that I go back and I read and I say, "Oh gosh, how did I miss that?" It is so chock full of everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. There's, when you're writing a book, especially when you're a poet and every sentence or perhaps paragraphs and even pages, you're creating little jigsaws for
Yes.
people and hoping that they piece them together. But a lot of the time, the truth is, and I sometimes tell young writers this, that it's really not worth it because 90% of it people miss anyway. but this is it's wonderful because I think you clearly get a real sense of a lot of the stuff that I was trying to do. Some people read this book and tell me, I've heard this before, that they couldn't differentiate between the women. They couldn't. And I found that very interesting,
Oh no,
especially when I know the effort that
they
I
are
went to.
very well defined.
But what I was going to say to you is that um, none of them, they had the knives ready because they're in a situation where they themselves are constantly at war,
Right.
if not with one another. They're at war with a system
Yes.
that seeks to kind of upturn everything and destroy them and take away everything that they have. But one of the most interesting kind of activities for me when reading this book was drawing those characters and deciding, what I wanted them to represent in a way. So for me, Iyasegi is very much about um, the so many in Nigeria. I was already having conversations with a lot of people about LGBT issues even 11, 12 years ago. And those ideas of, oh, it's a Western construct, those things were already being said. And I wanted a character who had had no exposure to the West at all, as a way of showing that, think for a minute, perhaps it's from inside and not due to external influence. So, that was my whole spiel with Iyasegi. With Iya Tokwe, it was really looking at, and I think when my next novel comes out, people will understand more what my interest was in Babasegi with Iyatokwe. And it's just those people who are perhaps slightly slower than others, or those people whose gifts and whose talents are not as easily identified or identifiable. That's what she represented for me. And then Iyafemi, it was the whole church thing.
Yeah.
People talk about, Islamic fundamentalism, but the truth is, in the South, especially, which is, I'm from I'm from the South, Miriam's from the North. But the truth is, we have our own problems with religion, and it's not Islam. It's actually Christianity, and the way that it's practiced has just become bizarre. And I wanted to talk about some of the dangers and some of the extreme tendencies that come out of that kind of system,
Have you
which
read have you read Purple Hibiscus?
I have, yes.
Mm,
I taught it for many years as well.
mm.
Yes. So yeah, that's just being able to show how damaging, maybe not as physically destructive as we might have in other parts of the country where the traumas can be very physical, but there is a lot of psychological damage, and so many of our young ones are damaged by the church, damaged by some of the philosophies and doctrines introduced to them at very young ages, by some of these pastors who incidentally also live in buy lots of private jets. But anyway, that's another talk show. That was the idea for me, to to draw attention to some of those things. And of course with
You want to know
Bolanle,
what she's talking about? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we.
Sorry, Lola. I think she was talking.
That's okay. And of course,
Sorry.
Bolanle was me exploring depression and how inexplicable the actions of those who suffer from depression can be. So it's very rarely 1, 2, 3. It can easily be 1, 2, 5 or 1, 2, 4, and I mean, that is to say that their actions and decisions are not often founded in logic, and they seek comfort sometimes in the most inappropriate places. So that's what I also wanted to draw attention to, kind of pivoting to sexual abuse, which is also
Right.
rife, and that sort of stuff. So that's what I was preoccupied with when I was writing it. Those were the issues that were very important to me.
Well, you covered all of it well.
The overlapping
Thank
themes,
you.
and I think as a Nigerian, for me, all of these issues that represented in each of the characters are things that I can see, things that are in the environment, but having you write them with the process or the way they show themselves, seeing it in black and white. I could see your skill, the way you just, because we would see some things like, say, Iafemi, oh God, there she goes again, and we laugh. That's how we wouldn't go deeper into thinking about some of the things that you expounded on, but when you put it like that, I actually began to see that, oh my God, this is like crazy. But for us, we have everybody, we all have an, oh
we all know one.
She has her water and her handkerchief, but we just kind of laugh it off and say, oh, there she goes again. But without thinking about the ramification of that to those that are in her cycle, her closest circle of maybe her kids, or, family members and all of that. I was really, it awakened so many things. And I think it opened my eyes to seeing my society in, not just in comic relief. Sometimes living in Nigeria, it's just comedy. Not just in comic relief, but actually thinking about them in terms of real problems, terms of real things that need to be addressed, and all of that. And I think anyone who says that the LGBT thing in our culture is from Western influence, I think they're just kind of like telling themselves lies, because there's a history of
course.
So, I don't know why anyone would say it. Absolutely not true. So I really appreciated seeing the character and recognizing the behaviors and telling myself that, hey, this is not just a laughing thing. It's not something that you laugh, especially for Bolale being depressed and then going off and doing something as crazy as marrying Baba Sheki. I mean, you would know that you don't even belong there. You know, but like you said, because she was depressed, because she was attacked, not just sexually, but everything about her was attacked. She just dipped. And then you see people, you see friends who make some random decisions, and you're not looking at it from the point, what could have happened to make you think that, but you just dismiss it, and then your reaction is completely different from. So for me, it opened up my eyes and myself to my society and to the underlying problems. It gave them a name. It gave it, you know, it defined it for me, as opposed to just being dismissive of all of these things that I see in certain people around me. So I really appreciated that.
Thank you.
Really did. I really did. It was just a masterful narration of a capturing of cutting through the cross section of society, and then capturing, you know, because for an author to actually write something that resonates and you recognize without even knowing that what you're doing is recognition, I think that's where the skill comes in. I recognize it without recognition. It just echoed in me, and you know, so I really
It feels familiar.
Yes, it just felt so familiar, and I could identify it without too much mental, without overworking my brain. It just, so I really appreciated your writing, the flow, the overlaps. You didn't feel punched, but you just felt carried along, you know, through all the dramas and all the everything, because that's how life happens.
It was beautiful storytelling.
Just beautiful
Thank you
storytelling.
so much, ma'am.
Life hardly punches you, carries you through, and I just loved. I couldn't put it down. I actually had to finish it in one sitting.
Oh,
I read it like
I'm
I
glad.
read in those days. I read it through like, oh my God, someone might come and take this book away from me. I better just.
That, you know, when I was writing it, I always knew that that different people would read it, in different ways. And I liked that. So a lot of people breeze through it and say, oh, it's such a quick, easy read. They describe it that way. And that's great. That's how they've read it. And other people say, oh my God, there's that. And they've kind of got other things out of it. And that's really what I always wanted. I wanted a book that was accessible on the very commercial side of literary fiction. I wanted a book that to write a book that anybody could read. And I've been very lucky so far with the stage play, the one-woman play, the graphic novel that a woman from Austria made because she just felt so moved by the characters, and the readings that people have done of it, and now Netflix is producing the film. So it's been a wonderful ride, and I'm just grateful.
When is that going to happen?
It's being written. I mean, I was meant to be part of the process, but I just couldn't cope. I just couldn't cope with everything else I'm doing in my life. And I just thought, look, I'm not going to write the book and then write the screenplay as well. Bye. Go and hire people to do it. And that's what's happened. And I just kind of had to disconnect with the process, especially because I didn't mention this, but I also have started tending to my first love, I guess, which is documentaries. Oh. So I made my first one last year. I can share the link if you like, but please. It was, it's just 40 minutes, but it's drawing attention to an issue that's very close to my heart. The fact that parents who raise children with disabilities just don't get the credit that they deserve, given how heart-wrenching and incredibly complex it is, and how they have to give a big chunk of themselves. So in Nigeria, for instance, children, you will rarely come across anyone with disabilities except for people who are begging by the roadside. And that's because the country isn't built for them in any way. So they can't successfully, push along a wheelchair. There are no, nicely created ramps. And, I wanted to just draw attention to what that process is. So it's not the kind of documentary that a lot of people would imagine I would be making, but it's me again, just trying to draw attention to things that I think are important. So yeah.
So we'll get the link to that and watch it, because we're, like you said, disability is almost a taboo, not to be discussed, almost don't make allowance for it, just hide it away.
They do hide it away, but that's what they do. I mean, the number of young people that have been locked in a room for their entire lives in Nigeria is just staggering. And it's partly a lot of it has to do with our misplaced sense of shame about ridiculous things that are no one's fault, and that's some of what religion also does to especially the Christians, and it's something that I have a real problem with. So when for instance, if you have a child with a disability, they blame you. Somehow it comes back to, what sins were you committing? Who were you? What did you do? Is there a generational curse? So it's always somebody's got to be blamed for something that's a human phenomenon.
Also has quite a bit to it. Adds its weight as well to
what does
disability, the culture of retribution from the gods, or it's the same line, just different name. Christianity might do that, but the culture, and I think the culture really has something strong, has a strong influence on that as well, because you find that on both sides. I'm a Christian from the north, and you find that sometimes, I think because Christianity came to the north a little bit later, it doesn't have the kind of strong hold over minds the way it does in the south. It's still kind of like loose. You wouldn't, but culturally, and I think that cuts across most of the cultures of Africa, you find that, is it something the gods have done? You need to consult what happened, and all of that. But I agree that it's a joint pressure from all sides.
Yeah. But
like
Yoruba
you said,
people,
stupid thing that is nobody's fault.
Yes, traditionally.
And it's misinterpreted, and then.
Yes. I'm sorry. I was just going to say, with Yoruba culture, with the Ifa and the cosmology of the Yoruba, the Ifa says, "Come as you are." So you'll find that within really traditional societies who live in Osun State, the disabled person is better integrated into society. They just they don't know what to do a lot of the time. They don't know how to help them, but they're not discarded and hated and killed. That you find more of amongst the middle class, who are so conscious of what other people might think of them. And the root of that is, do you see what I'm saying? That yes, you're right. I see, you're right, right? but a lot of our cultures teach us to be caring. And weirdly enough, we seem to be losing that. The more enlightened we become, the more exposed, you know. So it's a very strange thing, but yeah.
Sometimes it takes a lot of thought to dig back to see where did it actually go wrong. It wasn't like that when I was a girl. I had cousins, you know, especially with polio, before polio was, well, it's still not eradicated, but before it became a whole lot. Yes. Before it became, yeah. I have cousins that were affected by polio, and they were still a part of us, you know, with their disability and with all of that. So sometimes I find it hard finding where things just went like absolute, just went crazy. But anyway, I think that would be an interesting thing to watch, because it will explain so much about the current mindset of, I assume it's based in Nigeria, of course.
Yeah. All the contributors are Nigerian, the speakers and the families that I focus on, they're all Nigerian, but very different backgrounds. But they're all Nigerian.
Are you talking about a mentally or physically handicapped, or both?
Either.
I think that would be both.
Yeah, either. It could either. Obviously, it's more difficult when the physical attributes are very present and visible. It's often even more difficult. But then again, we are also struggling with children who are on the spectrum, because people just think they're stubborn or silly or being disobedient. We've not even started to scratch the surface in trying to understand autism, for instance. Where do you start? So yeah, that's my next project. Yeah. Autism.
I think that's interesting, because as I said before, I was a school administrator, and at this particular time we had a young lady. Her father was from someplace in Nigeria. I'm sorry, I don't remember where now, but the little girl was emotionally handicapped, and she was on medication, and she had other problems. But her biggest problem was her father, who said that she was just trying to get her way and she was stubborn, and that if they were home, that she would act like that, because children at home, meaning Nigeria, whatever the place in Nigeria he was, didn't act that way. And it was an ongoing problem with this young girl, because when she would have a particularly difficult time and we had trouble controlling her or something, her father's answer was because she was in America and they allowed children to do that sort of thing. And so I really see firsthand what you're talking about as far as attitude. And I've long since lost track of this young lady. But when you have, and by the way, I never met her mother. She did have a mother in the home, but I never met her mother. Her father took care of everything involving the school. But with that kind of attitude, I many times wonder what happened to that young lady, that she, with that kind of attitude, that she was faking, or she was stubborn, or she was just doing that because she was in America.
Yep. No, it's sad, and that's that exactly is the sort of attitude that you often see. It's very strange, and it's very complicated, and people just need to start being better educated about it, because or else why are we all here? if we're not doing anything to contribute to the lives of those who are simply not equipped to do the things that we can do, you know? But I mean, that's all just personal philosophy and the sort of things that keep me up at night.
Well, you know, you said, talking about autism, oh, where do we start? You know, that it seems so overwhelming. Uh-oh, did we get cut off?
No, I can hear you.
Okay.
No.
But I'm thinking back to the beginning of the disability rights movement here in the US about 50 years ago. And it starts with the people who are most affected, whether they can speak for themselves or their families speak for them. And it's building that compassion from hearing the personal stories like you're telling. So, yeah. So, but I wanted to take that back to your novel because I felt there was a lot about shame. There was a lot of shame in the novel. And everybody was very concerned with shame. And I hadn't thought of it this way before, but maybe the rest of you have. It's a way to control people.
Absolutely. That's patriarchy, you know?
But the mothers have to carry it out.
Yep. It's survival for them.
They have to bring up the children to fit in the culture, like foot binding was in China.
Yeah, FGM.
FGM, right?
Yeah, it's they end up being. I think it's Mona El-Tahawi who calls them the foot soldiers of patriarchy. You know, but it's almost even for them. It's almost culture, you know, to not the element, the fear of shame is so it has such a strong hold on our people here, but especially the women. But you're not only thinking about yourself, it's being careful not to bring shame to your family, not to bring shame to your husband, not you go to ridiculous lengths to cover the most absurd and the most horrific behavior of the men around you and who are supposed to love you. But these things are also pretty universal, to be honest. It's not just here. It's everywhere. And I've seen that over and over again. And I think that's one of the things that makes Baba Segi so perhaps enjoyable for people who don't understand or who are not from this culture, is the universality of the mindset of some of the women. And it's really about survival in your environment. You know, how can you find yourself and be yourself in your own tiny little world that you've been thrust in and now have to stay afloat in?
Yeah, I think you explained it better just before you came on. I think it was Emily, you talked about that we were talking about the competitiveness and the
all the people's characters were so narcissistic, so self-centered.
Yes.
All five of the adults. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And I said to Miriam,
oh yeah, that's what we talked about. Yeah.
Just about how their children were only of value as they reflected on them and the family.
That's correct. But did you notice Aki, the second boy, the first son?
Oh, he was a
second child. Yeah. You know, and the way that I illustrated that he might be different is things like his father would cock his hat to one side and he would immediately turn it to the other side. So I was kind of just dropping little things about the fact that, you know, that would hopefully inspire the readers to understand that this boy may have been born in this environment, but he's seen what it is and he's already charting a new path for himself. Just for a bit of hope, so people don't say, why are all the men so useless?
Yeah, but I think that's something we ourselves, irrespective of our environments. I think we all grew up with mindsets that are not quite right. And as you grow up and you go out into the world, you owe it to yourself to begin to make that adjustment to, to just make yourself better.
Unlearn and relearn.
Is what makes, exactly, learn and relearn. And that's what makes certain aspects of your culture, your immediate culture, puzzling, that you would see that it's wrong, you would see the effect, and you'd still elect to carry it on.
We're slaves to culture. We're slaves to culture, and that's something I say to people, that your culture should serve you. You shouldn't serve your culture, your traditions. They're meant to serve you, which then begs the question, then why, if that is indeed the case, there's so many things we do that we know are cause trauma and are damaging. Why haven't we stopped? And I talk about one in the novel. You'll notice that when a particular character dies, if you watch what happens around. So in Yoruba land, if a child dies, the parents are not allowed to see the child's body ever again, and they're not allowed to know where that child is buried. So the idea, it's almost like tough love, to sever that tie, to help the woman become strong again. But you can imagine what it actually does, especially with everything that we now know about grief and mourning and how we cope with things. I'm not sure it's the healthiest way, but I talked about that briefly. When that character died, the people who then had to ensure that she was buried, and how the parents couldn't be part of that process at all. So, part of one's job is to at least interrogate some of these practices, and hopefully some people read and want to join you in the debates about why it's important that we rethink some of our cultural practices.
I think that's so important for us. Before you came on, we're talking about it, and I was telling them that so much of culture is still strong. We're talking about a woman's identity tied to ability to birth, to have offspring. And so Emily asked me that, do we get called by our children's names? I said, yes, it's so many things rolled. It's one, it's identity. Two, it's a sign of status. You don't have a child, you're still below a certain line. You have a child, you get elevated society,
and marriage too.
And marriage as well. And I was telling her that even in modern times, we have translated that into the English language. Now you hear everybody saying mommy this, so instead of saying that in your vernacular, whatever your local language is, like you would say
Maman, Lola, Maman.
Now say,
yes,
to the name of the child.
Yes.
We're still some of unknowingly.
It's true. Yeah, it's true. Right, so it's that's just I met a lovely, incredibly brilliant young lady today who's 24, and she was telling me that she didn't want to get married. And I thought to myself, this generation is so crazy. These young ones, And I hope all their parents don't kind of fall off the face of the earth from high blood pressure, hypertension, and because they are going to, they are taking on tradition and culture. They're not even consciously taking it on. They've just decided that their lives are going to be different, and they're not going to be bound by some rules around marriage or being, and making people feel low, low and inadequate because they're unmarried. And I really like that.
They're more aggressive with their resistance. My generation, I think, were a bit passive aggressive, but eventually we bow down to it. I got married at 35 because I resisted as long as I could, but eventually I bowed.
I couldn't wait. To get married. I got married at 22, my first foray into matrimony, because I couldn't wait to get out of my parents' house. Yeah. So it was just pure desperation. Yeah, I mean, even now, the reason you can be talking to me now at this time is because I live alone. So I live in an estate. So I occupy one flat and my husband's in a totally different flat. And it's the only way we can be married, living apart, which has many Nigerians going, what? That's you. What? Are you sure you're married? There are lots of weird looks and like, what is that? They can't wrap their brains around it. It's just there's something odd going on. But yeah, may we have the space to be able to live in a way that means we can survive in our own skin.
Yeah, that's so important. That is so important. I don't know, any more questions? It's running late. We've it for an hour. Any more questions? Let's just round up with a question from each person. And if there isn't, we just skip so she doesn't fall asleep on us.
It's my fault, really, because my answers tend to be quite long-winded.
Yeah, but that's what we want.
That's the way my brain works.
Yes. We get so much more out of the long answers. So we appreciate that. Barbara, any questions on your list? Okay, you're muted, but yes, I think I read that as a no. All right. Steph, any questions, or we'll just hold on for when you read the book?
None that I can think of right now. I can't wait to get off of here so I can go order my book.
I would just like to know when her next book is coming out.
Oh, I don't know. Between all these crazy things that I'm doing, I don't know. I don't know when I'm gonna have the time. My life is just chock-a-block at the moment. I'm trying to do this this festival, the Ake Festival this year. I'm trying to do a real sort of, we're looking at two themes. Can't decide which one. There's homecoming, and then there's roots and branches. And I'm trying to make it like a really important event for a lot of people in the Black worlds, or Black people in different parts of the world, to kind of come and have a cultural meetup sort of thing. So there's really so much that I have to think about and figure out. So I don't even know if I'm going to have the time this year, to be honest. That's the honest truth. But I have over 20,000 words that I haven't been able to make much progress with. Sadly.
We're happy that there's on the list. There's one on the way. We'll be patient and wait for it. And in the meantime, we would search out the poetry books as well as the documentary and read up. What dates are the festivals?
The festivals, 22 to 27 November this year. So I'm having writers from the Caribbean, from South America, it's really a big project. But it's probably my last as the director. I've done it for 10 years now, so I want to move on to other things.
Okay.
So I'm trying to go out with a bang, like they say. Yeah.
That's great.
But that's why I released the children's
book. Any question?
So the people would say.
Yes, we need all the titles of everything.
Okay. You'll get them.
Yes. We need to get the titles, get the links to the festival so we can link up and see if it's something that for me, definitely it's going to be easier for me to attend both, but to see how everybody else can get involved.
Miriam, now I'm coming to you to get you to host one of the book chats at Kaba Fest, if you can do it.
Oh, I'm sure I would love that. I mean, This was the best book that I need to get me back into that reading, into the world of words. I've always thought that words were like paint. Paint in the hand of a painter. That's what words are in the hands of a writer. And it just enables you to create some beautiful imagery, that just gets people going. So this was the best book, honestly. It was everything that I would have wanted in a book. Just well written, the themes and everything. So I think I'm in now, and I don't think I'm letting go. Thank God the kids are growing. Kids growing just solves a lot of problems.
Yes, so it really does. I'm just finishing up Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston.
Yeah.
So I'm also just enjoying my journey back into reading and listening to audiobooks when I'm on a jog and things like that, which I'm really loving. So I appreciate this very much. And I'm sure we will be in touch soon, Mariam.
Yeah. So, Elizabeth, any question before we let you go off so that there's no lingering question in our minds? Emily, Elizabeth, any question? No.
I don't have any question, but I certainly enjoyed this discussion today. I cannot wait to share this book with my book club.
Thank you so much. And I'll be happy to chat to them as well, by the way, if they want to talk to me.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Marguerite, there's April.
Yeah, because we do invite authors to our club meeting.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. As long as it's a Zoom call, that's fine. Wonderful. I can pretty much fit in. Yeah.
And I can get your information from Miriam?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Not at all.
Thank you so much, Lola. In the absence of questions or comments, I want to really appreciate you just honoring us with your presence and giving us just a look behind the book, behind who you are. And we can't wait to have more. Don't wait too long. Try and get that book pen down. We need more books like this that put us in a positive light. Well, not quite, but the content reflects the culture, which is no reflection on any one person, but that you can reflect the culture so beautifully. The picture, you can create that picture for us to understand what it's about. I think that is we need more storytellers. There are so many more now, but we need the exquisite types that become timeless with time. We've hung on Wole Soyinka and the first generation writers for too long. We need a new crop of writers to carry the banner and just keep the wealth of talent in African literature, Nigerian literature going. So thank you so much. I look forward to getting the children's book for my kids. Yeah,
Good.
getting into reading. Yes, and I think 45 minutes after lunch and 15 minutes before bedtime is now my new
Yeah,
now
good luck with that. Good luck with trying that at home. I was a boarding school. That's why it was easy. Even I couldn't achieve that with my kids.
Yeah, but we can
But
only try. We get
we
them
can only try.
once a week, 45 minutes. I think it's a win these days with all the competing tablets and programs and all of that. I think it's a win.
This is true. And of course, reading to them, you know. My love of reading came from being read to by my teachers as well. It was, you could get me to do anything if you bribed me with, I'll read 10 pages to you. I'm your slave. I'm your whatever. Yeah. I'll do anything. Like,
Yeah.
so I shouldn't have said I'm your slave. I'm sorry, I take it back. I know that it's extremely offensive, but I just meant that I can be subservient for as long as you want. I love just being read to so much. But yeah, so thank you for having me. And I wish you all a fantastic rest of the day, week, month, and
a very good night.
2022. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Bye.
All right then. Bye-bye. Yeah.
Bye.
All right, guys. Are we having another meeting or we're good? We just continue in the Facebook group?
Yeah. Miriam, I put a few notes for the author in the chat. Would you look at it before we go and just get them to her?
Yes, she's definitely giving me the link. I'll hook up with her after this.
Yeah.
But
it was a wonderful discussion you two had.
It was really like that. So let me just type this into her. Good. So Barbara also dropped Barbara, what is the Library of Congress code number?
That's for the Dark Child. It's the Library of Congress.
So are we agreed?
That's called the LC.
Are we agreed to go?
That's called the LC number. And you don't have to really use it. I just gave you that as a reference. So when you go to look for that book on Amazon, if you use the author's name and the title, The Dark Child, instead of, I think it was, what was the other title we were searching on?
The African Child. That's the one we know it as, the African.
Well, here in America, I think they're calling it the Dark Child.
Okay. So I think let's, Emily also dropped a very important link in the group about how you can access the ebook.
Oh, I think I put that on the Facebook page.
Yeah. Yes, it's on the Facebook page. So I think we should make
that our next book that we're reading?
Yes.
The Dark Child?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Dark Child.
Okay.
Dark Child is the next book, but I think if by the 10th, I think you can get it. Stephanie Marguerite, I think you can get it. I think you can.
Yes, it comes in a few days.
So that's also very interesting.
I got a used copy, but I was able to get it.
Okay, great. It's a very interesting read, and I think we'll enjoy it as well. So we keep everything as is. We interact in the Facebook group, and then on the 5th of next month, we would come on. And after that, we have Oil on Water by Helen, who will also be joining us to discuss it like we did today, but that's for April. So March.
So in March, we're going to do the 5th again. And is it going to be 3 or 4? 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock?
So I was thinking, actually I wanted 5. I wanted 5 p.m.
Yeah, because that's what you
because
started.
Sometimes the 5th will fall on a work day.
Oh, okay.
So that hopefully you're kind of like out of work and you can join us. So unless the author specifies a different time, we'll stick to the 5 p.m. Eastern, if that's fine with everyone.
Isn't that a little late for you?
Oh, I'm fine. Look at me looking fresh. Can you tell what time it is?
Well, Lola looked really tired.
Yes, I know the eyes are telling the truth, but it's good for me because by then I'm sure the kids are settled, and then no matter how
Okay.
tired I am, I'm not distracted at least. So it
Okay.
actually kind of works for me. And by March, the time goes back, so that's even better. That's
Okay.
more manageable. Yeah, so that's fine. So let's just stick to 5th of every month, 5 p.m. Unless the author can't, then I'll let you know.
Wait a
I'll
minute,
let you
Miriam,
know.
when we talked about it before, we said the first Saturday of every month,
Yeah.
which I think is
Yeah.
better.
Yes,
Yeah.
the first Saturday.
It's only those 2 months that happen to share the same date.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, you're right. It's the first Saturday of every month.
Okay.
But I still think 5 p.m. works. So don't worry about it. 5 p.m. works. Because I know Emily goes into work and comes out, and I really would like her to be a part of as much as possible.
Me?
Yeah. So let's.
No. This is the
So
early
first-
afternoon for me.
Okay. I will find out the time. 5 p.m. First Saturday of next month is.
It's the 5th as well.
Incidentally, I think it's the 5th as well.
Yes.
I kept saying the 5th. I checked it. It's still the 5th.
Yes.
Okay, so discuss it now, or you can send it to the Facebook group. Right. So thank you guys so much for coming. I really appreciate it. It's important to invite someone and have as many people on as possible. 2-3 people are still missing, or 4, but I think this was good. And I think she enjoyed herself as well. So thank you guys so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it. Yeah.
This was
So,
great.
It was great.
I was looking
Great.
forward to this for months, so I'm very happy we got the time worked out.
We got it.
We could be here.
I'm so sorry about that. I
finished reading it, after I finished the book, I was ready to discuss it. No one had read it, and I was like, "Oh, I hear crickets."
I get a bit worried because I don't want someone to share something that someone hasn't.
No, I wouldn't say a word.
But I think what I'll try to do is maybe chapters 1 to, break the chapters into 3. And then every week we talk about, just drop whatever you want to and prior to the discussion. So I'll try and map out like questions based on what I read. And just drop that into the Facebook group. But thank you guys so much for commenting. Really appreciate it. Emily, Barbara, thank you guys so much for dropping your comments there. It keeps things lively. All right, guys. So I'll take a cup of tea, take a bath, and then hit the bed and get to sleep.
Good night.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Good meeting, everyone.
All right, then. Bye-bye. Yeah. Hi, Steph.
You get some rest. You've had a long day. See you later.
Okay.